I'm really optimistic about the world. I know that there's all these problems that we have with climate change and trying to solve energy crisis and all of this kind of stuff. But the reason why I'm optimistic about the world is not because of anything that I know that's special, but it's because I think about the generations in my family and what has happened in my own family. In 3 generations, we went through in 3 generations, we went through dire poverty, absolute poverty, to who I am today and where I am today. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massack. I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. So many people had helped me that I wanted to pay the favor for, to help you out. So in 3 generations, we went from absolute dire poverty in my family to me becoming a professor, and most and all of my siblings doing okay. When my grandfather immigrated to Canada, they were in absolute dire poverty. They had, I'm probably 7 kids, and they had to go in and settle in a foreign country and clear out land. But here's the thing, it's not what you're thinking about, that it's this easy affair. It was going into the coldest part of Canada and clearing and homesteading land where it was just absolutely cold and brutal. And they did it as Polish immigrants. They did it facing unbelievable racism or all of that kind of stuff just before the Second World War. So then my dad, he was a product of the Industrial Revolution. He went and worked at a pulp and paper mill after that. And he spent many years there, 43 years working in a pulp and paper mill as an operator. And he taught me a lot of things. He taught me a lot about life and just being okay with who I am. But he was very much a product of the Industrial Revolution. Very much what you'd sort of think about from the 1950s in terms of the style of life that you might think about. And then me, I'm part of the information revolution, I guess. And in my generation, we use things like information. And we use things that I don't even really, if you were to compare me against what both my dad did and what my grandfather did, and you were to compare what we did, you wouldn't even consider any of this work. You would think that this was completely silly and goofy, because I'm not sitting down and doing a whole bunch of, I'm not working in the fields. My grandpa, he worked in the field and gardened and worked his entire life. He was into his 90s when he died. He was 91 or 81. Blank. But the whole time he worked and worked and worked. And I was thinking about, what it took, and the reason why he actually worked like that was because it was just unbelievable amounts of grinding work that you'd have to do to get ahead and to actually stay afloat. Whereas what I have to do is really pretty minuscule in terms of what we have to do. So going back to the idea of, thinking of energy crisis and all of these problems and macro problems and all of that kind of stuff, if we could do that in 3 generations, where I started out and my family started out in dire poverty, and if we would have continued to go in those 3 generations and did the same thing, the vast majority of my relatives and I probably would have been dead. If we continued to do that, things would have been a lot different. But you have to remember that we're changing rapidly. Things change rapidly. Through generations, we see all sorts of changes with technology, all sorts of changes in society for the better, and which makes me extremely optimistic about the world and the fact that we can solve an awful lot of problems, because that's what we do as human beings. We solve problems. We sort of recognize things. And the simple fact that we recognize these global problems is actually the solution. So if you think about things like poverty, for example, the number of people that have moved out of poverty in the last 20 to 30 years around the world is staggering. Absolute poverty. And we'll continue to do things like that. And because we recognize these problems, it means that we will actually start working on them and focusing on them and actually doing something about them. So before you get all up in arms about everything's going to crap and all of that kind of stuff, just think about the 3 generations that I went through, and likely you went through. Not everybody, but many of us have the exact same story that I have in various different ways, where in a few generations we went from dire poverty, where we're literally starving. My grandparents, they were literally starving and not doing well and facing all sorts of, just crap, just absolute crap, because of the fact that they were Polish immigrants. And now things are a lot different. So I want you to feel very optimistic about the world and how things are headed. I think we need to be. Things change rapidly over generations, and many great things will happen in the future. All right, take care. And by the way, in case you're wondering where I'm at, it's Monterey, California. It's very beautiful. Take care and have a wonderful day.